Okay, so you got your machine, you got it all set up, and you've got it turned on, and now you got a bunch of funny stuff that just popped up here. Maybe you do, maybe you've never seen any of it, but I'm going to explain it to you in as layman of a way as I can that we can understand it for doing boat canvas. There's some functions on this thing that we're just not going to use. There's some programmable stitch stuff. Everything that we do is custom, so I'm not going to mess with these programmable buttons down here. I might do a video later in the future to be honest with you, I don't know exactly how they work. I know that there's some speed stuff that you can do and stitch counting and stuff like that. But what we're going to talk about is the rest of the functions that we are going to use on this thing. We'll start with the obvious, being the 333. What that is there's a back tack on the beginning and on the end of every stitch line, and that's set up automatic, and the machine does it automatically. So when you press go on your treadle, it's going to go three stitch back tack at the beginning and a 3 stitch back tack at the end. Obviously you can change these by setting it down up and down for how many stitches that you want to, which leads me directly into the top 2 icons. That's this button and this button right here. That's the functionality of the backstack. If you watch, I can turn this completely off. If I turn it on, that's a half tack. The next one is a full tack. And the third time I press it, that's a double tack. I don't really want a double tack on there, and a half tack isn't enough, so a full tack is really what we want. So you want to make sure that both of those are set at a full tack, okay? The machine does it automatically, so one of the things that we need to change, there's a few parameters that I want you to change on this straight away before you even start sewing. So I'm glad that you're watching this video right now. So let's go, and what we need to do is the speed of the machine. Well, let's talk about that first. So the speed of the machine can be adjusted by these 2 guys right here. The speed up and down, so I can go up speed or I can go back down speed. There's that way to get to this. The other thing to do is hit parameter, and position 1 is, if I hit set, is also the speed. I can control that right here too. So if I save that and then I come back to the finger again, you can see it's at 2,500 RPMs. I personally like this to be, at about 2,200 for me. What I would like to see you do is to set that at like 1,400 or 1,500 before you get going. That way you can't just lose the machine on those full speeds. So that's the back tacking and the speed. So, but what we have to do, because the 3 stitches at the front and the back of the stitch line are happening automatically, they have a parameter set for their speed alone. So if you push P, and we're going to bump this up and go to position 4, if I hit set, you can see that it's set at 1,200 RPMs. That's really, really fast for that back tack. So what I want to do is, you know what, let me push the wrong button. I would like to see you back this down to maybe like 700, and then hit set. Hit the parameter button again and go to position number 5. The first one was for the front tack. Position 5 is for the end tack. That's also at 1,200. Let's move this back down to 700 and hit save again. And now you can see when I come over here to the machine and I sew, see how that went by itself, and it was relatively slow and non-harming. Now I can sew, and then when I stop and I hit the back tack, it also went slow. Let me show you what it does when it's real fast. It's crazy how it was set at 12, set. So let me start it. I'll start it slow at the beginning, and then when I go and when I stop, well, anyways, it can scare the crap out of you. So let's set those parameters down lower to 700. So let me go back to number 5 again and drop this back down to 700 and set that. So that's a pretty important one. The speed control and the back tack setting, get this thing under control so that you can actually use it. All right, let's move on to some of the thread cutting stuff. So the automatic trim. This button right here this button right here controls these icons. You see that there's two icons that you can turn both of them off, both of them on, or either one on or off. The first one with the scissors, what that is when you stop and you hit the back of your treadle and you want to trim the thread, I want it to trim the thread, and I want the foot to come up so that I can just trim the thread, foot comes up, I pull my materials out of there. You can turn that on and off by hitting this button. Oh, my bad. This button. That's on, right? And that's obviously off. So the next one on the other side is when you stop sewing. If I leave that light on right there, when I stop sewing, every time, even if I'm not getting ready to cut the threads and trim the threads, the foot comes up automatically every time I stop and start the machine. I don't like that. I like the foot to stay down. So I'm going to turn that button off, and I'm just going to turn the trim with the foot going up. So you'll see, and there's certain situations when you would want the foot to come, you could use that as a function just by pushing that. Certain times you would want the foot to come up. If you were sewing little bitty squares all the time, you would want the foot to come up so that you can instantly just turn it so the foot's not pushing everything down and holding it down in its spot. But if I'm doing like reinforcing, putting a 2-inch piece of reinforcing on, for example, every time I stop, I'm usually lining something else up with my hands. So I don't want the presser foot to be released off the product. I want it to stay there and hold down what it's holding down. So those are kind of why those functions exist on there. This second button right here is the third icon down. What that does is it sets the needle. If every time you stop, you want the needle to be up out of the work, you can set it that way. If you want it to be the needle down, you set it on there. So there's just two functions with that. But that's the way I like it. I like it to be down because typically I'm getting ready to turn or stop, or it's holding itself down or something. I like the needle to be down, especially if I'm rotating the piece. The needle needs to be down in it so that you don't lose your position. So I leave that set down. So that's the needle position, up or down. The next icon over here, I can show you over here on the machine when I start and sew. If we want to sew to a line like this line right here, I'm getting ready to sew up to it, and I get there and I just haven't made it quite exact right, you can come over here and you can tap this button. Every time you tap it, it's a half a stitch. Watch, needle will come up, then it'll go back down. Up, down. So that's an easy way versus wheeling the wheel. You can use that center button. I think that's why they located it right there, so it's easy to kind of remember. And honestly, I've never had this before, but I have found myself using that quite a bit. Going bap, 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 just to get myself exactly where I want to go. So that's what that center function is there. The next one over here is going to be the scissors. So the scissor icon is on or off. That's going to tell you whether or not you want the trimmer to trim off the tag lines as you start and as you stop, which obviously that's part of the whole functionality of this machine. So definitely we want that thing on. So that's that function. This next one over here, the squiggly line one right there. Oop, wrong one, sorry. Let me turn that back on. That's this button right here. See, I can turn that on and off. What that does is it turns this clamp on and off. This clamp right here, what that clamp does is it holds, let me get this material out of there. What that clamp does is it holds the thread, this tag line, so that you don't have to, okay? It works in conjunction with the thread cutter. So you need the thread cutter on, and then you also want to have that clamp on. What that clamp, or the tag line, I should say, if you watch when I start sewing right now, the clamp is on. This is the way I've set it. You see how there's just an ever so little bit of tag line sticking out of there? I want that like that so I can take my scissors and come back and trim that off manually, because if you don't, what happens is it winds up like these. It wads all the threads up underneath there, and it's pretty unattractive to me. And a lot of times we have finished sides inside and outside, right? So we're looking on both sides of this thing, so we need both sides to be attractive. That being said, this is a direct reflection of this knob up here. This knob controls how long that tag line is. So for example, if I crank this dude down, right? If I crank it down and that will leave a longer tag line. See, the tag line's a little bit longer now. And now if I loosen this knob up here up and I start, let me do it one more time because it didn't. There it goes. Well, it's not doing it. Anyways, it's not doing it like it's supposed to. Maybe it will this time. Let me start over. Let me crank this down and start. Okay, long tag line. Now if I loosen it, well, that is, do I have it off? No, it is on. There it goes. I don't know what it was. So see how the tagline's gone now? There's no tagline in there. These all started. It will probably start working. That's what one thing I've noticed about this thing is sometimes if you go a couple of times, it will all of a sudden start kicking in and working. But there's no tagline now, which means that whole tagline is bunched up underneath here in the back side of it. So let me just for my own self do it again. Start right, yeah. So tagline gone. That's with this knob up here being loosened. I'm gonna tighten it down because I want this tagline to stick out so I can trim that off myself and it's not bunched up underneath there. So the last thing that I want to talk about is down here, there's this dotted line and then there's a straight solid line. That's this icon over here. The solid line, what that does is that's going to set up different parameters for doing memory functions for stitch length, number of stitches, stuff like that. We're not using that functionality right now. So you want to just keep this on the dotted sew line. Okay, so that's how these functions work. Before you go, let me say, or before I end this, I want to show you one more thing, and that is a troubleshooting thing that I found pretty consistent with all of the sewing machines that I've bought so far is the thread trimmer. So the thread trimmer has got an adjustment on it. What I'm going to do is up here at the top, I'm going to turn the machine off, okay? It's going to power off. If you've got problems with your thread trimmer, what I want you to do is hold the S button in and then turn the machine back on. What that's going to do is it's going to bring up parameter number 72, which is the thread trimmer. Actually, technically, it's the needle bar take-up is what you're making the adjustment on. But if I hit set, you can see that it's set at 379. That's what 380 is actually what I set this. I don't know if I can change that or not. 76, 78. That's what I want is 380. Hit set again, and now it's set that parameter at 380. I believe that pretty consistently all of those numbers were a lot higher, like closer to 400 or something like that. And what was happening is the thread trimmer was nicking the thread. It wasn't completely cutting it, but that's the solution or the set for the thread trimmer. So there you go. That's these functions in a nutshell. We'll make up more videos on doing some of the other functionality in a bit. So good luck with it.